Hey everyone, in this episode we'll talk about what to do when you're stuck trying to create a new character.
You may need to make a new character because an old character died, or just you're starting a new campaign. And I know I've got like a backlog of character ideas, but sometimes that doesn't always fit with the game you're going to be playing, and sometimes it's hard to come up with a new character.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of that idea of, well, what do you do whenever you're stuck and you don't have that character that you've created? Like me, I've got a bunch on like D&D Beyond that are all 1st, 5th, and 20th level versions of 3 or 4 different characters that I'm looking forward to play. But yeah, maybe that doesn't work with the world, or maybe I'm just doing a one-shot or something like that. So where can you go for quick inspiration for building your character?
One of the first things that I go to is thinking of characters in like books and movies that I've really enjoyed. That, maybe I want to play my version of that character. So thinking of that and then using that kind of broad general idea to then sit down and say, okay, if I were going to create this character in D&D or in Deadwood or Deadlands, what would that character be?
I like to pull inspiration like that, but for me, it's always about also making sure that it's a dynamic character or figuring out, I don't want to exactly recreate the character from the book. I really enjoy the Dresden Files books and all of that kind of stuff, but I don't really find Harry Dresden to be that interesting and dynamic of a character. Don't at me, fans. So I wouldn't necessarily be interested in playing that, but it would be neat to play something based off of that. So I think that's a really good idea. Most of my characters are some version of a stranger in a strange land. And that comes just from a lot of the literature and the books that I really enjoy. So I definitely use that as an inspiration.
Kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, and this way is actually how I created Nyx, one of my Shadowrun characters, is I will go through the book and look at like the bonds and flaws, those character traits that you often, like in D&D, are in the backstory section. Shadowrun, looking through all those different traits that you can pick up. So looking at those details and then finding something that sparks an idea and then building from there. And oftentimes with those characters, like I'll start small and slowly build my way out. And I won't have everything figured out. Like there'll be holes in the backstory, but I get to fill those in game. You can go check out a video on that.
Yeah, we just did a video about that.
Yeah. So sometimes that's fun to go the opposite end and focus on like one aspect and then build out from there.
Absolutely. And when we say a quick way of building a character when you don't have an idea, it also doesn't just have to be a throwaway character or a one-shot character. They can still really grow and develop and all of that kind of stuff, even though it was a faster way of creating them. Most players' guides, one way or another, has a random table for your player creation, and I think that gets overlooked a lot, and it shouldn't be. It can be a lot of fun to just roll the dice and find a way of making those different traits and statistics, things like that work. Now, sometimes I see people say, well, but I don't like that because then I can get contradictory traits.
Oh,
or something where they're having a harder time figuring out, how do I make this kind of character work? And my response to that would be, well, but a lot of the times people are contradictory. And letting that drive your character, and there are things that are in conflict about them. Maybe you have this lawful good person that's always trying to do the best thing for the party, and they're very selfless, and they also steal stuff. Those two things go against each other, but then trying to figure it out and play it out, and the problems that arise. Maybe your character's just trying to fix themselves. They want to get better.
Yeah, those might be traits that your character doesn't necessarily like about themselves, but
key 3.
Yeah, key 3. The flaw is, mild spoiler because it hasn't quite come up yet. But like, if things get really dire, she will run away. She doesn't like that about herself, and it kind of contradicts a bit of how she wants to be, how she envisions herself. So that makes for a much more dynamic character when you do have some of these contradictory characteristics.
Characteristics. No, absolutely. And they can become really endearing and interesting things about the character. In our Deadlands game, Baptiste is a priest, but he's also a gunslinger. And the whole reason why that's there is because, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But it does make it makes for something to be a lot of fun. Don't shy away from things that seem like they're at odds with each other. Creating that interpersonal conflict, intrapersonal?
Inter, because it's
inter's
not, intra is between.
The conflict that the person has about themselves is still a really interesting thing to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. And also, if there's a trait or something that I can't figure out how to work this into a character, roll the dice again.
Yeah, sure. You always, of course, have that option. Mm-hmm. There is a really interesting, I've never done this version of Let's Roll the Dice. I know that our friend Pierce, he's Sorcerer Blob, he's done this a couple of times, is going to Twitter and saying, all right, folks, here's the poll. What's my character's class? All right, we figured that one out. Now here's another poll. What's the character's background? Mm-hmm. And that can potentially be a really neat way, a crowdsourced way of figuring out who it is you're going to play. And then you always say, all right, great. You have fiat over something if you just doesn't work for you, like you were just saying. But have fun with that random unknown nature.
Yeah, and along those lines, also another way of figuring out your next characters, maybe sit down and look at what class have I never played, and roll up that character to see, hey, maybe I never played Warlocks before the Warlock game, and I'm really enjoying that class. I had never really thought of making a Warlock character before, but trying out, and especially if it's something of a one-shot or a smaller campaign that's you're not going to be locked into this character necessarily super long-term. But say, I've never played a healer before. I'm going to play a healer and figure out from there what the character is. So seeing that approach.
Most of us, if we've been playing for a while, you've got a file full of characters that you're aching to play. But if it just doesn't work or you want to try something new, there's a couple of different things you can do. Maybe turn to social media and see what your friends want you to play. Roll in the random table selections in the back. Take inspiration from your favorite book or movie, or maybe just give it a shot because you've never played that type of character before. What are some of your favorite ways for rolling up a quick character when the ones that are in the bank just aren't going to work? We'd love to hear some of the new ideas and figure out the ways that you like to do things. A big thanks to all of our patrons, and especially to Bryce. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron.
Thanks for watching the video. Give it a like and share it, especially if you know somebody who's having writer's block when it comes to their next character. Maybe this will help give them some inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe because we make videos here every Tuesday and Thursday, and you don't want to miss any of our content.
So until next time, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dawn.
And we're Roll for Initiative. Bye.
So,
oh, okay.